Hello and welcome to the Rabid Unicorn #1 DPS PVE Berserker Guide. I am Avery Darling, and I am here with our most talented, highest DPS player in North America, LoanWolf. Sometimes I stay up late at night watching his stream, glaring into his beautiful... Are you kidding me? Do I have to read this?
Thank you, Avery. So you want to know how to zerk? You want to grow ball hair on your chin while doing the most elite deeps in your raids?
No?
Well then, this guide is for you. This guide is for the cocky, arrogant, most overpowered players who want to impress all the ladies with the size of their EP and by pressing 4 to 5 buttons consecutively, in a row. Now, cue the explosions.
We don't have the budget for explosions, but here's some gunners using auto attack.
Why don't we have explosions?
I guess not enough people clicked our ad about the unicorn taking a dump into an ice cream cone.
Alright. Fair enough. Let's get into it. Let's go with skills first. The first skill you're going to be using Firestorm every 50 seconds. Your Whirlwind is replaced by Firestorm. It does an insane amount of damage. It is your best AoE skill. It is also a pretty darn good single target ability as well. Between your two leaps, you're going to be using Wild Leap. The difference between the two leaps, Furious Leap is going to stun a target for 1 second, not even much time at all. Wild Leap is going to break a CC. That break a CC is just very useful if you get caught in something, or just dodging any type of boss mechanic. Between Tectonic Blast and Flash of Rage, it doesn't matter. You're never going to be using your 4 ability. Just take the key off your keyboard. If you're using your 4 ability, you're doing something wrong. It's just a really, really broken choice at the moment. Between Battle Frenzy and Thundering Roar, Battle Frenzy is extremely useful. Sometimes, I used to think Thundering Roar was really good in like dungeon scenarios, but Battle Frenzy you're just going to be using to build up rage, so you really need Battle Frenzy. It also gives you a little bit of a damage reduction, which is nice. And then between Thirst for Battle and Uncontrollable Rage, you're going to go Thirst for Battle. This is going to increase your damage by 40% for 10 seconds. This skill right here is why Berserkers get a lot of burst. Let's go into talents. First talent I use Firm Grip. Increases Firestorm's duration 2 times. So you're going to be Firestorming for a significantly longer time. Really helps with AoEs. Also helps fill in your dull moments in your combos for Berserkers. Then I use Experienced Fighter. Basic attack activation speed is increased by 15%. The inflict 42% more damage doesn't really matter. The reason this is useful is because it makes you building up to your Fracture much quicker. Then you have to use Shield Destroyer. This is a mandatory skill for Berserker if you're in a raid or anything. That's going to help you pop Witch Curses. That's going to help you deal with any type of character that has a shield, whether it's PVE or PvP, if it's a Lightbinder shield or if it's a Mechanoid who applies the shield. Next thing I use is Tenacity. Battle Frenzy no longer consumes rage. Battle Frenzy uses a lot of rage. Battle Frenzy uses, 190 rage? Is that right? That's a lot. So, it not using any rage anymore is great, because you're going to be using Battle Frenzy as a rage builder. Next thing is Call of Rage. Thirst for Battle, critical hit chance is increased by 25%. Now I said before that Thirst for Battle is going to be your main burst damage skill. You know, that's when you're going to, in those 10 seconds, you're going to input as much burst as possible. That's where your damage is going to be coming from. So you're going to have 25% increased crit chance. Now I just want to mention something on crit chance. The maximum crit chance you can have is 50%. So because you're going to be doing the majority of your damage through Thirst for Battle, and you're going to be having Call of Rage in there, that increases your damage by 25%. Do not need more than 25% crit chance as a Berserker. Any more than that, it is going to increase your damage, but it's not necessary. So that's why, as a Berserker, you're going to be focusing other stats. You're going to be focusing accuracy. You're going to be focusing Crushing Blow, if need be. when we get into our choices in the talents. This skill right here, I use power trick. Other people, they switch this out for something else. I like the versatility of fast attack, which is your left click, right click. It knocks down your opponent, and with power trick, it deals 10% of their damage. It's just going to reduce their health by 10%. If you don't kill it within 10 seconds, then it regains that 10%. So sometimes it throws off your teammates if you don't kill a target in 10%. Like, hey, how did that guy heal? So just, that alone, just messing with your teammates, great, perfect, use it. And the last skill I use is Battle Fury. Battle Fury will gain 15 points of rage for every time you're hit. Now that's in addition to you gaining rage for being in combat, you gaining rage for just using your rage builders, so that's going to help you get more fractures out. And as a Berserker, that is where all your damage comes from. Alright, let's get into symbols. I'm going to go over the mandatory symbols you're going to need first. First one, Paladin symbol. I think that's pretty generic for any class that you're playing. Next one, Alchemist symbol, increases your damage by 15 seconds for duration 10 seconds. Kind of just comes up when you're in combat. It's really, really good. Usually it should proc on your first combo, so your first burst attack, you're going to have that extra 15%. Next one is the kinetic symbol. Using Impulse Charge increases the character's damage by 10% for 6 seconds. Now let's go back over to our skills. What uses Impulse Charge? We have Whirlwinds, who use Impulse Charge. And they'll actually proc on the first hit, on the first time you press 1. So all the next bunch of little hits that activate will also be procced by it. And the next thing is your third strike, your Merciless Strike. So that is that will also activate an Impulse Charge, which is great because you activate your Impulse Charge and then you use your Fracture. So your Fracture gets that 10% damage buff always. Usually you could get, I think you could get 2 Fractures out in the Merciless Rage, in the kinetic buff. Next we have Cold Calculation. If your target has more than 50% health, increase damage by 12%. Great. Your Berserker buff, cooldown of Thirst for Battle, is reduced by 15%. Another great skill. Okay, those are your class-specific skills. Besides that, you're going to want to get the Warlock skill. I'm working on that. It's just, it basically acts as an additional bleed that you're going to be using on your character. It's a damage over time. It's great, does a lot of damage, so I highly recommend that. I wish I had this skill right now. And Slayer, not that useful for a Berserker, to be honest. Necro, the Ghostly Viper, is just extra damage, so that can't hurt either. Now, the other mandatory ones, you have Maximum Recoil, which I have at 6 stacks, and Ultimate Strength at 6 stacks. Since you're going to be a Strength and Luck-based build, you're going to need both of these. In addition, you want your 2 bleeds, which is your critical, your lacerated wound, which applies a damage over time every time you crit, and your compressive trauma, which will apply a damage over time every time you use crushing blow, which is 22.5% of the time. This scales off your strength, this scales off your luck. Since you're a strength luck build, it's going to give you a lot of bleed damage. In addition, Element of Surprise. For the first 8 seconds of the fight, damage inflicted is increased by 12% for every level. I have this at rank 3 right now. So the first 8 seconds of a fight, I have 36% increased damage. That's a lot of damage. We have Mark of Death. Everyone knows about Mark of Death. You basically tag the target, and it will do that damage that you've done in the 6 seconds. It'll take 15% of that damage and inflict it onto the target. So if you could do a lot of damage in 6 seconds, which Berserkers can, you're going to be doing extra damage through your Mark of Death. Now I use some defensive cooldowns. I use Dash, Clever Maneuver, which gives me a shield every time I dash. Really good. really good to keep you alive. And I also use Impulse Barrier, so every time I use an Impulse Charge, which is when I'm doing my fractures, I get a shield. Helps me stay alive. Other things that you can use, Lucky Shot, not a good skill for Berserker. Do not use it. There's plenty of other skills that are much better. The reason for this, your Fracture, your Whirlwind, all these attacks are a bunch of little attacks. So whenever you crit, you're actually critting a bunch of little crits. You don't have a big crit ability. So just buffing one crit hit doesn't work well for Berserker. Other things, eventually you're going to want to get your Impulse Intensity and Mobilization to 6 once you get into the 100k range, because you're going to have supports that are actually going to be increasing your Valor and Spirit. But that's far late game. I have Pain Shock available. Pain Shock is okay. You know, it's an extra 30-60k damage just by pressing an E. I wouldn't go out of your way to get the ability. And the last ability is Warrior's Creed. Now, the great thing about Warrior's Creed is damage dealt is increased by 5% for each level of the symbol. So I have it at 2, so that's 10% increased damage for this symbol. Now, that's increased damage dealt. That means that's 10% increased damage dealt after all of these symbols are in effect. And that's something that I believe a lot of DPS, whether you're experienced with the game or new to the game, that they don't realize. They just look at it and they say, oh, 5% increased damage. Why would I get that over, Gravitational, which increases my damage by 10%, or Cold Calculation increases my damage by 12%. Strength Serum increases it by 15%. Yeah, but this is damage dealt. You're getting an extra 10% on top of everything. But it also has that negative drawback. Incoming damage is increased by 5%, or 10% in my situation. So that's why you really need to have some defensive abilities, because you will be much squishier because of it. Okay, let's go into our order. Now, where is my order? Now, this order setup is basically going to be the same for any Berserker. You're going to be using, in your first chapel, you're going to be using Accuracy, 10% Accuracy. Accuracy is a phenomenal stat for Berserker because you're going to be mainly strength-based. Next temple, you're going to be using Accuracy again. Third, you're going to be using Crushing Blow. Crushing Blow is a great skill. What it does, has a chance to increase your base damage by twice. So it basically is the same thing as how crit works in other games. So you take 7590 or 5907, and you have a 22.5% for your base damage to do double of that. So Crushing Blow, a fantastic skill if you're strength-based skill. So on the fourth temple, you're going to be using really whatever you want. For PVE content, you're really going to probably want Discharge Recovery. Why Discharge Recovery? Why would a Berserker who's Strength Luck need Discharge Recovery? Let's go back into our symbols. Gravitational Perturbation. That is a horrible name. Every time you use an Impulse Charge, damage is increased by 10%. So, more Impulse Charges, more Fracture buffs. Which reminds me, let me upgrade that up. Alright. The next chapel, Accuracy again. Next chapel, going to be using Crit Chance. Solidity is also a pretty good skill. I do like Solidity. It does increase my damage a good bit. I just like having the extra Crit Chance, more bleed procs. Next chapel, you're going to be using Crushing Blow. And the last, you're going to be using Solidity. Once you start getting pretty high prestige, you start getting a lot of stamina. So getting that Solidity really is going to help increase your damage. For tougher fights that you're struggling to stay alive, adaptation is also pretty useful. Okay, let's just go into ring setup. Now for your main hand, you're going to want to use the weapon that increases your fracture damage. Fracture damage is basically all of your damage. So 110% more damage is great. If you can get the distortion weapon, which is the purple one, gives you 110% more damage and also 8% might efficiency, even better. Here's another distortion weapon. This is just going to be your whirlwind. Inflicts 171% more damage when impulse charge is activated. So that is great. Does significantly more damage. If you could get that extra solidity from the distortion weapon, also great. For your amulets, I don't want to downplay it, but it's not going to matter. You don't need any amulets. I guess Crushing Throw is probably the best skill that you could be buffing, because Crushing Throw is your 4th left-click attack. That's going to be your rage builder, which is good. But when you start looking at the actual damage, Crushing Throw is only going to be doing like 1-2% of your entire damage. So you're really just increasing the damage of a skill that only is going to do 2% of your damage. You know, for PvP, Wild Leap is really good. Sometimes people just don't realize when the Berserker just jumps on you and then all of a sudden does about, 20% of your health, and it's a nice little boost. And also you could use Destructive Wave, which is your right click. For rings, you basically just want strength, luck, accuracy, crit. That's the best setup that you can get. Just keep in mind when you're getting blue rings, sometimes the stats for accuracy and crit will be a little bit different. Just always be looking for the highest accuracy that you can get in your rings. That is by far the most important. And then if you could also get crit on top of that, that's just money in the bank after that. Now, another thing I want to get into with the Ascension Atlas in your vectors. You're going to be going Might and Luck, Stamina and Luck, and then Might. Luck will just do more damage when you're doing those Fracture, Thirst for Blood, Fracture, DPS damage. So you really need... having more luck will help a lot more than having an extra 1k strength will. Keep in mind my vectors are pretty upgraded, so that extra luck is pretty significant, so it definitely helps. Okay, let's just go into a few damage combo scenarios. So let's go to Thornius Camp. The reason I like Thornius Camp is because of the fact the boss is right in the beginning and I can do a lot of damage testing pretty quickly. Hey, I have a tablet there. So the basic Berserker combo is pretty simple. Like I said, it's really just hitting 5 buttons in a row consecutively. Okay, let's do some damage testing. The first thing I want to show is a little tip for any Berserker before a big fight. You can switch over to Archer. And then switch back to Berserker. And you can see now you have full rage. Now your entire combo is just going to be hold right click, apply your debuff, press Z, which will start your battle frenzy, so anytime you take damage, you're going to increase your rage. You press your C, your thirst for blood, then you do a fracture, followed by another fracture, and then since you're going to be normally running out of rage, then you do your crippling blow, and then your firestorm. And that's going to kill your entire thirst for blood combo. So let's just go practice it on this guy. Apply your debuff, Z, C, 1 fracture, 2 fracture, use your C ability, and then use your 1. Then from there, if you have any rage built up, you can finish them off. Now if you look, Fracture, we applied 3 fractures, does an insane amount of damage. Your Crippling Blow and your Firestorm also do pretty good, and you're going to be getting an extra about 10% damage just from your bleeds, which is pretty good damage. Now for any of your AoE combos, AoEing is pretty complicated as a Berserker. You basically just have to jump into something and hold down 1. If you really want to get fancy and play good, you could also press right click before it and then hold down 1. But that is basically it for Berserker. Your 2 ability is just going to be your gap closer. Your 1, that's going to be your AoE. 4, you're never going to use, and everything else is going to be building up on your building those fractures. And that is basically it for your damage combos. Most of the time for bosses, when you're spec'd pretty nicely, you're not going to need too much rage building when that's done. So keep in mind, Fracture is going to be your main use of rage. Consumes 165 points of rage. So every time you see 165, understand that you can now use 1 Fracture. When your thirst for battle is down, you're just going to want to keep lefting. Build your rage, keep building that rage, try to build up enough rage so that you have 2 fractures available. And then you pop your thirst for battle again, and then do that combo that we did again. Which you have the fracture, another fracture, crippling blow, then firestorm. Firestorm may be not be up. If firestorm is not up and whirlwind is up, you do not use your 1, you go back to building your rage. The reason you use Firestorm is it's like 450% increased damage of your base damage. It just does a lot of damage, and all of your damage will be a lot of little hits, and they will apply those bleeds. So Firestorm is going to keep those bleeds up almost all the time. Your Fracture is going to keep those bleeds up all the time. Even just doing the rage building combo is going to keep the bleeds up all the time. Bleeds are fantastic for Berserkers. So that's why the dot's really good, the witch dot, lacerated wound, and compressive trauma. And that is the end of my guide. If you guys have any questions, just meet me in twitch.tv/rabidunicorns. I will gladly answer them for you, or leave a comment on the YouTube video and I will get back to you. Avery, what do you have?
I want to say thanks everyone for watching and putting up with us. We've got more class guide videos on the way. Lots of talented players that know their classes inside out and want to share their knowledge with all of you. If you haven't already, like LoanWolf said, check out our stream. It's up as many hours a day as possible. Like our videos, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Perfect. Done. GG. I love it.
Coming on the way, that sounds dirty.